Hello. This is so weird. So, welcome to my new channel. A channel about perfume, juice, sauce, whatever you would call it, and memories associated with such. Uh, my earliest memories of perfume would be my mother, who, as far as I know, I'm sure she wore more than one, but the only associative memory I have of her, and the only thing she ever put on a list when she wanted um, a birthday gift or a Christmas gift, was Chanel number 5. Um, and it was such a great scent. It was such a great perfume to smell. And beyond that, I would also say that it's intermingled. It doesn't just stand alone by itself. As an adult, by the way, I've purchased it many times, both for my wife and for myself to just enjoy, to try to relive a little bit. I mean, after all, isn't that what we're doing throughout life, especially as we get older? There are, of course, hopefully, of course, are always new experiences. But something about the great burn down of the peak years, be that 30, 40, or 50 years old, and then the slow wind down to the black veil of death. But I think to a point when you're born and you go up the upside of the roller coaster, it's all about what's in front of you. And hopefully, to a degree, it stays that way. But I think that to a certain point, the latter part of one's life, and not necessarily in a depressive way or just pure bittersweetness or melancholy, but I think that a lot of the latter part of one's life is reflection, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And as such, I think we try as humans, and to a degree on the way up that roller coaster too, but more so on the way down, to make possibly not the best metaphor about life, but is try to relive and recreate things of value, things that were formulative, things that were meaningful and monumental. So getting back to my mom and Chanel number 5, and by the way, I lost her in 1997. I believe I was 34 years old when she passed. So, and she was 62. So, not an overly long life. Longer than some, but not nearly as long as many. And it was impactful, as I would assume it is for most people. Mothers hold a special thing after all, because they give birth to you. Fathers are in a different category. I came from a pretty standard family, ups and downs, but my parents stayed together. And my mom was kind of my peeps. I was very attached to her. Many things about myself came more from her than my dad. And I've lost my dad too in 2015. And as you can tell, this is my first video, so it's very stilted and awkward and uncomfortable. And hopefully, with time and doing this long enough, it will get better. Which is odd because I've actually, in my former life, done interviews and spoken on camera a lot. So, but it's been a while, so perhaps I've lost my chops and I can regain them, or perhaps I won't regain them and this will utterly be a failed experiment. So anyway, to me, Chanel No. 5 smells at my present age, it reminds me of my mother, but not in the way that I had hoped. Of course, there's reformulations. Beyond that, there is just the associative kind of sidebar periphery of how we remember things. In a way, it's kind of beautiful. We can't ever have that back, but we yearn for it, we strive for it, we push for it, and it kind of can keep us going. In the same way optimism works for you, for instance, that you would think tomorrow will be a better day than today. So for the most part, it could keep you going, and then hopefully you do have a good day, and then that rolls into itself, and so on and so forth. So one of the things in smelling both vintage and new Chanel No. 5 that I realized, more so even with the vintage, because whether that really held any weight or not, I knew it was vintage, and I knew that if there was a chance that I was going to smell something closest to my memory of being a child with my mom and her wearing Chanel, it would be that. And yet it still didn't meet the need of kind of that olfactory part of your brain, the memory part. It's not really working in real time. It's working in, like a off of memory. Is that integral with that scent memory was the notion that it needed to be on her, her actual body, if I recall correctly, she sprayed on the inside of her wrists and rubbed them together, which I've, in later years learned is not the way to work with perfume. She certainly sprayed on clothes. She was a fairly robust or significant cigarette smoker, so that had to be in there. Also, she was a big gum chewer, Wrigley Spearmint gum mostly, occasionally peppermint, and then some of the more popular at the time, but not so much popular today. I mean, today everything is about, berry blast and, mega flavors, and as we used to call it in our teens, cum gum. Maybe that's not around, I don't know. But the stuff where you bite into the gum and there's liquid on the inside. But so that needed to be there, as well as lipstick. So, and then of course a purse. I mean, a purse, and we know that this is kind of tried to be incorporated with certain perfumes like Dior Homme, which has got a lipsticky, and there can be a leather quality, so that could be the handbag or the purse. But so that is one of my first scent memories. And then my dad was a very successful businessman, to whatever, everybody's interpretation of this stuff is different, but we grew up on the hill on the wealthy side of town, which, your life is your life. I didn't think that it was weird because it was my everyday. But as my world became more expansive and I got to meet people, be it mostly through school, you realize there's, economic differences, etc. But that's not what this is about. But my dad, he was both of my parents are very practical, very utilitarian. Both were Depression-era babies. My dad born in 31, my mom in 33. So my mom's great luxury, there was a few, but mainly was Chanel No. 5. She absolutely loved it. If my memory stays with me on this, I believe she told me at one time she had smelled it in a drugstore. I was raised in a small town. She was raised in an even smaller town, but all within a 12-mile radius where I was born and grew up, where my parents, after they married, lived after my dad was in the war and in college. But where they were from was a radius to that town, my birth town, of about, honestly, probably 10 miles, but could be 12. So the town that I grew up in was kind of the big town in the area, even though it was very small. And the thing that I was always told, the story that I was always told by her, from her, was that she had first smelled it. Sorry about that. I gotta pop up. This is very ghetto. Just to see how this goes, then I will invest in some software, and I'm just doing this on my phone. And actually, on that note, I would like to state I'm not really, I have no aspirations that this is going to take off or be some great success or money-making thing. I'm doing it because I really love perfume, but I'm also doing it because there are some YouTubers that I should mention, and I will put in the below the video, that I owe a lot to. I watch a lot of YouTube. I've really come to like YouTube for a number of things: documentaries, other interests of mine, certainly perfume. But there's no, my competitive days are done. My young buck days, trying to stake out my ground and then piss on a tree and call it my own and defend it, that doesn't really interest me anymore. So the Sentinel, I think I'm pronouncing that correct. Pep, I believe it definitely is his name. Maybe Pepe. I don't know that. But Australian bloke, phenomenal channel. And then Ramsey, who is extremely long form, which I'm probably going to lean more that way just because I'm very verbose, and I'm going to try to not do any editing, which I'm sure will absolutely make sure that I have single-digit views, people that can suffer through this, plus my face and everything. And so I'm still learning a lot, but those guys, and there's some others too, some of the more funny, irreverent, but yet knowledgeable ones, Mr. Smelly. Strange to say that. He's, I believe, based out of London. And then some of the even just more popular mass market guys that are just, obviously, they've been doing it long enough and have enough viewers that they are tethered into the distribution teat, as it were, where they're always getting new scents. I think his name is Ashton, Scent Gents. And then there's a dude who, I don't mean this as an insult at all. I can't remember his name, but he's got like really coiffed hair, a dollop, and like a super chiseled beard. He's a very thin guy. He's got a huge collection. And another one too. I like, is it Sebastian? He's very informative. I think he's on the west coast of the United States. I'm in the southwest of the United States, so a fellow American. And there's another, Sense of South Jersey, whose name, I can't think of it. I think it begins with a K, not Kevin. Super nice guy. And absolutely love his videos. And so anyway, those folks have inspired me to try this, and I'm going to do it. I'm not doing this for views. I'm actually doing it just because, I don't know. I'm old, I'm near death, I'm bored, and I figured I would try something new. And, okay, so back on topic. So Scent Memories. Still don't even have a name for what channel this would be. I'm thinking about the Scent Teller. Sauce Monger. I have no idea. I know a lot of people call perfume juice, and that makes sense. I like calling it sauce. Expensive sauce. So, but I'm learning a lot. And so back to my dad. I'm fucking all over the place. place on this. But so my dad was very, very practical. He wore, I don't know that he ever actually went out and went to like a perfume counter and tried things. And of course, back then, chicks wore perfume and guys wore cologne. I mean, it's all perfume. So my mom was Chanel No. 5 through and through. I believe she came across it at 17 at a drugstore perfume counter, and that was just her signature thing. That was it. So my entire childhood, when I couldn't think of anything, and of course you have to get money from your parents to gift them anyway. But when I would go to my mom and be like, hey, Mother's Day's coming, or your birthday's coming, or Christmas, can you make me a list? And yeah, it could be this, it could be that. Sometimes it was anything you want to get me will be perfect, but she wore a lot of Chanel No. 5, so at least once per year. That would be on a list. And then, of course, I would go to my dad, be like, Mom wants Chanel No. 5. She put it on the list. Can I go to our pharmacy in town? And again, I was born in 63, so back then, your pharmacy had everything. And they were not open 24 hours. Neither were they online. There was no online to be online to. So I would go to Jack's Pharmacy. My parents you could have accounts then. So I could go in and buy myself a candy bar, or I could buy my mom a Valentine's heart and card, like Whitman Sampler or Brock's or Russell Stover. And I would take it to the counter, and they'd be like, "Hi, Scott," and I'd say, "Can you put it on my parents' account?" And they'd write it up. That'd be it. So I don't know if my parents went in there once a month and paid the bill, or Jack's Pharmacy sent it to my parents. I think that's what they did. They sent them an invoice. My parents would pay it. So anyway, I'm all over the place here. Sorry. So I would buy Chanel No. 5, and my mom wore it. I know that she had a huge black, the squared off bottle, classic Chanel bottle, that sat on her dresser in their bedroom. But I also know that she had small versions of it, the same black with a gold cap. She probably had 4 purses that she used, seasonally, like a heavier, darker one for the winter. And I always called it preloading. And they would hang in our main closet where winter jackets were kept. And so regardless of the season, if I rifled through that closet, bored, whatever, day off school, snow day, bored in the summer, like absolutely bottom of the holy shit on my board list. I had played outside, I had played inside, I had played with G.I. Joes, Lincoln Logs, hung with friends, bike rides, hide and seek, chase, walked downtown for sidewalk sales, played tennis. And so you're getting into those heady days of summer, and like school's 2 weeks out, and you're doing the countdown, even though you're trying to enjoy every day because you're about to go back to prison. I would rifle through. I remember going through the 3 purses that were kind of preloaded. So if she would have her summer purse, which would be usually a white or leather purse, and then her fall purse would kind of be like light tan, gray, like a light red. And then the winter purse, I remember always, was a cloth purse with like gold. I don't think it was gold, but gold colored framework and a clasp, and a gold chain onto like a dark burgundy red or dark brown shoulder strap. But anyway, all of these things, they didn't have her wallet in it. That was in her current purse that always was in the kitchen on the counter for ease of use and grabbing it when she would run errands and things. But all of her purses would always have a few brand new packs of gum, 1 or 2 open packs of gum, sometimes a pack of cigarettes she'd forgotten about, and always 1 or 2 of these small Chanel, not decants, but just like travel size, I guess. So, and some lipsticks would be in there, and a compact with her, I don't know, the mirror and like a rouge or something. I have no idea. Fucking dude. But those things were there. And the smell of that is still, at 60 years old, So visceral. I can smell it right now. Chanel number 5, mixing with leather. And then the inside of the purses were always lined. Some kind of cloth, silk. They were always shiny. So you have that. Leather, really, it was up front. The remnants of Chanel number 5, and then lipstick, that kind of waxy, like almost like there would be that thing of honey, like maybe beeswax. I used to lick lipstick as a kid, because it was a great color, right? I mean, like the same reason you chomp on pencil erasers, or you have to puncture like Stretch Armstrong and see the slime come out. I mean, kids are weird that way. I mean, yeah, I'm old enough. We used to break thermometers and play with mercury. Fortunately, never ate any of it, but definitely just play with it with our bare hands. So I made it to 60. I don't know. If I'm out in the next couple of years, you guys can watch the video and say that it's the mercury that did it. So those things are, I mean, I'm all over the place. I apologize. We're already up to 21 minutes, and I haven't really even made a fucking point here. But Chanel number 5 on my mom's side, and my dad, again, I have no recall ever of him saying, "Oh, I'm going to go buy some cologne or perfume." I mean, no. It was always gifted to my dad. And what I recall, and again, my mom's great luxury was Chanel number 5. And she liked clothing. And she would just, and her other huge luxury was getting her hair done every Saturday morning. I never understood that, but, these were things that she did not have and wanted, I guess, as a child, a teenager. And so once my parents had, quote unquote, arrived, this was very, very important to her. For my dad, he was a CPA, certified public accountant. So his whole thing was about work, amassing wealth, and not spending money. So my dad wore whatever was popular on the TV. I do recall my dad watching commercials, High Karate, for instance, and going, that looks interesting. So my mom, being a good wife, or me being a good son, or my brother being a good other son, would make a mental note, like, hey, around Christmas or around my dad's birthday, like, Dad saw that High Karate commercial, which if you don't know what it is, you've got to look it up. Like, totally not politically correct now, but High Karate. And it was, it's perfume. It's a dude perfume. And I need to buy some, actually. I'm sure it's been reformulated down to, well, but I love the commercials. I mean, as a kid, it's like the Orient, karate. So it seemed pretty badass. And the fact that my dad, who was this very, very serious conservative guy, was like, oh, that commercial looks interesting. So we bought that for him, and he used whatever you gave him. And these were not, I mean, the guy used to take my sneakers when I thought they were dead, whether I was a teenager or as an adult, and he would, I think we had the same shoe size, but honestly, his foot could have been smaller or bigger. He didn't give a shit. So I would pronounce or announce a pair of sneakers as dead. I need new ones. And they'd be pretty worn out. I'm not like a wasteful person for the most part. I mean, I can be. And he would just be like, oh, those have a lot of life left in them. So he would, he might chew you out and say, no, keep wearing them. But for the most part, he would just be like, can I have them? And yeah, sure. Well, I mean, truthfully, he paid for them in the first place. And he would wear them. Great story is when I was 19, right around the time, right before I left the nest permanently, I had a pair of Nike running shoes, the really, really basic ones, not even Cortez. They were like blue with a yellow swoosh, like super baseline running shoes, made out of like some kind of nylon. And I hated them. They were uncomfortable, but I wore them on and off for a couple of years. And then when I was getting ready to leave the house, because I knew this about my dad, I said, do you want these shoes? And he said, oh, yeah. when my dad passed away, so I left the house at like 1983, 84. The last time I visited that house was 2012 with my wife and daughter, paying him a visit, and then he passed away a few years later in 2015. Those shoes were in the family room closet, covered in that kind of green residue, um, vibrant green residue, chlorophyll residue that, of course, comes from wearing them when you cut the grass, when you mow the yard. And he wore those every summer. And I mean, they were like almost dry rotted. But so I bought those probably, or he bought them probably. In 81, I offloaded them to him in 83 or 4. And he wore those every year from 83 or 4 to 2015. And it was the only pair of sneakers he owned. And they were mine for 2 or 3 years before he wore them. So this guy was a user upper of things. I mean, he didn't just go like, oh, that's not for me. And I remember him spraying High Karate when he got it Christmas morning and going, kind of don't like that. And my mom's like, oh, I'll get you something different. My dad was like, no. And my dad used up that whole fucking bottle. So that's one I remember from my dad. I remember Jovan Musk, which I thought smelled like shit, utterly shit. And he wore that. I remember that was when I was in 7th or 8th grade because he used to give me a ride to school. And I remember him coming downstairs to eat at our breakfast table. We had a breakfast table nook thing up on a raised brick platform from our family room. And by that point, my brother's in college. So mom's on the left, reading the newspaper to a degree, usually writing grocery lists, to-do lists in like a nightgown housecoat kind of thing, smoking a cigarette, eating a boiled egg with a half a grapefruit and a cup of coffee, but always a lit cigarette. My dad to my right, fully decked out in his suit for work, reeking. I mean, and he's not an oversprayer, but for my 13 or 14-year-old nose, man, this stuff smelled like a combination of just dried piss and some kind of like fecal matter. I hated it. And he wore it every fucking day until it was gone, man. And then smelling that with coffee, cigarette smoke, their standard breakfast was a half a grapefruit with like Sweet and Low on it. My mom was on Weight Watchers at the time. She succeeded in losing all this weight and keeping it off until the end of her life. And I'd have whatever she made me. It was usually the same, half a grape, because I always had a weight problem once I hit puberty, or a little pre-puberty. My dad was an ex-Marine, so he never really had a weight problem. But he would eat whatever he would eat whatever she made. He would wear whatever she bought. The only thing he was really picky about were his business suits. He picked those out and had them tailored. So, but anyway, just Jovan Musk, man, for fucking like a year and a half, 7th through like half of 8th grade for me, smelling that, and then getting in the car with him. He would take me down to the school and drop me off, and then he would go to work, and just like trying to get that shit out of my nose. So Jovan Musk, and then what was the other one too? It was I believe an Avon perfume, and it came in a slightly translucent brown bottle in the shape of like a Model T. I looked it up about 6 months ago. I found it, and on the ass end of it, like where the wheel would sit, the spare tire would sit, there was a bottle cap, or possibly the wheel itself unscrewed. So that was those. I remember that. And then Brute. My dad also wore Brute. But again, he, as far as I know, never shopped once. My mom bought it, and he was like, oh, okay. Or he saw a commercial. Because, that was the heady days of, advertising hadn't become completely evil yet, where they were like, really had like psychiatrists trying to figure out, how to sell this shit. Cereal for kids was not totally on the bottom shelf in the supermarket, but they were slowly figuring out how to, be evil and maximize profits. But yeah, I recall distinctly my dad just, like TV dinners and legs pantyhose. My mom, knitting and watching, occasionally looking up at NFL Monday Night Football. That my dad was obsessed with, and going, "Oh, that looks interesting." And then the next, Saturday was always grocery shopping day, and then so anyway, I'm rambling like a motherfucker here, but so that's a huge one for me. Is my mom, Chanel number 5, gum, cigarettes, lipstick, leather purse. Such a and can't even get close to it. I mean, I've gone as far as new and vintage Chanel number 5, buying Wrigley Spearmint gum off of Amazon because I can't even find that. It's just the basic stuff. Everything's burst and Balzando flavors and with flavor crystals, and laying these out in an open area and then a closed area and trying to, and you can't do it. So what's the old saying? You can't go home. So that's a huge one for me, and so I'm gonna try to focus a lot on memories, uh, stories surrounding scents. In the next one, I'm gonna do a one that's really important to me, and it's not a perfume again. I'll get there. I will get there. I promise. But is the childhood memories of scent, which of course I touched on specific to Chanel number 5, but another one is going to be more along the lines of something I would love, and I mean there's like just no chance, but love to have recreated in a perfume. So much so, stupidly so, that I've contacted some independent perfumers and queried, and even went as far as sending one a deposit, and then a number of discussions. And they were like, "Hey, I can do this part or I can do that part. I can't do all of it together." Which, as I've learned more about what goes into perfumes, I understand it was a little dreamerish of me, because I wanted this whole scenario of how I met my wife to be reflected in a perfume. And they were like, "Hey, you can have like 2 to 3 versions of that and maybe layer them, but what you're shooting for in one thing, it would outdo even perfumes from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that have a note pyramid the size of you know the population of Africa. I mean, it's just, there would be so much going on. There would be almost nothing but confusion in smelling it. So anyway, if you watch this, thank you. And this is Ghetto. It's being done on my phone in the living room, next to my dachshund, who's asleep, while my daughter is in college and nursing school. My wife is at work at the hospital. And this will be the first one. And I'm doing this mainly for myself. I mean, if somebody finds this interesting, say something. Otherwise, sorry for the ramble, but yeah, I'm a long form kind of person. My background in music, it was long form. Not, yeah. I mean, we'll go into all these things over time eventually. So, but anyway, if you find this and it was interesting, thank you for suffering through it, and I'm going to do more soon. Okay, peace.